Are you a student, mentor, or parent that loves robotics?
Then you're in the right place.
Up-to-date info on all things robotics. This
is the RoboZone Podcast
with your host, Pete Eckman. The RoboZone Podcast is brought to you by Kettering University. It's a Kettering-built world.
Hello and welcome to the 45th episode of the RoboZone Podcast. This podcast is for Tuesday, January 23rd. Let's kick this podcast off with first updates.
Now it's time for the first update.
So the fourth update to the rules manual came out just last week. While it was a very brief update, there was some detail to the skill that was displayed in this team update. So we encourage all the teams out there to go read up on all the updates, and you can find a link in the show notes to the combined update. So keep abreast of what's going on with the rule changes.
The RoboZone Podcast is brought to you by AndyMark.com, your robot parts experts.
And now, let's talk procurement and design iterations.
Tonight with me, I have some great mentors. We're finally reaching outside of the state of Michigan. It's happened. We've taken the next step. It's only taken us 45 episodes. So with me tonight, first I'd like to introduce Libby.
Hi, everybody. My name is Libby Kamen-Drost. I'm the lead mentor for Team 1923. That's the Midnight Inventors out of Plainsboro, New Jersey. I've been on the team since I was a student on the team, but right now I do a lot of administrative stuff for the team and our K-12 robotics program in our school district, as well as sort of taking the lead on high-level design strategy stuff for the robots. So I'm kind of a little bit of everything, but mostly sitting at the top, letting the kids go crazy.
And next, we have to have a Michigan team on here because RoboZone's headquartered in Michigan. So we have Josh. Josh, introduce yourself, please.
Hi, everybody. My name is Josh Fritch. I'm from Team 27, Team Rush, out of Clarkston, Michigan. I've been on the team and involved with the team for over 12 years now. So been doing it for quite a long time. And since starting mentoring in 2011, I kind of taken over the role of head strategy guru and robot design mentor. So,
and finally we have Alan. Alan, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Alan Gregory. I'm the head coach for Spectrum 3847 out of Houston, Texas. I've been coaching Spectrum for 6 years now, and I've been an FRC for 15. I also am a lead robot inspector and do a bunch of volunteering around the state and at champs and all over the place.
I didn't know you were an inspector, so that can bring up a whole new line of questioning tonight. So the first subject I want to talk to you guys about tonight is procurement. This is something that I've been suffering with as a rookie mentor, and when I started having this issue, I thought it was a good subject to talk about on the podcast. So, Libby, my first question to you is, when does your team start their procurement process for this year's Power Up game? Did you start now? Did you start a couple months ago? How did you go about that process?
Sure. So I guess a little bit of background on our team is we've been around for 13 years. Like I said, I've kind of been around for the evolution of it. But in the last 5 years or so, we've really moved into a much more permanent space, a much more kind of guaranteed spot within our school, for example. So our purchasing process has changed. When we were sort of this, we literally built in people's garages in the early days of 1923. And at that point, it was like, oh, God, we need this. Someone run to Lowe's right now and get it, which doesn't really work for a sustained engineering process. Now, what we try to do throughout the season is we utilize a lot of VersaFrame. That's like a really great, not only quick prototyping, but often becomes a good chunk of our actual robot build. But that's one example of sort of a COTS product that we can stock up on. Things that we are likely to use in the future, like motors, like gearboxes, for example, different reductions on a VersaPlanetary. I'm not trying to be vendor specific. It's just what's coming to my mind right now. Is something that we choose to purchase or at least stock up on in the fall. We go through with our any of our remaining leaders that didn't graduate, let's say they were a junior or something, and our new leaders, and we kind of look through our inventory system and say, what did we use last year? What do we commonly use? It's getting to about October, November. What do you think we should be purchasing in advance of the season? And that's for two reasons. One, so that we're not spending a ton of money after kickoff and then having to wait for that stuff to come in. Obviously, suppliers can get really backed up with game-specific requests, as everyone knows. Once what the game is, maybe a particular type of wheel is commonly out of stock. So we try to do that in the fall. And then when it comes to game-specific, for example, we've done a lot of prototyping and we've done a lot of the design work up front, and now it's down to the specifics. I have our students put an order list in for different vendors once a week. Typically, I need it by Saturday night after our build session is over, and then I take care of everything when I'm in the office on Monday morning. So, for example, that's the only other thing I have up on my desktop right now is those order sheets. And we try to keep it, we stock up early to not have to purchase as much last minute or, right at during the build season at that kind of crunch time. So hopefully that answers. I will certainly let somebody else. I can blather on forever, but I will let Josh and Ellen take it. But yeah, that's kind of our philosophy is stock up early with the stuff we know we're going to use, metal gearboxes, blah, blah, blah. And then anything that's game specific obviously comes into play after we know what that is.
And Josh, does Team Rush do the same exact thing, or do you guys approach it in a different way?
I would say that we're very similar. In the November timeframe, we come up with a big shopping list of, everything that we are anticipating that we could use, that we've commonly used over the past years. Like Libby said, gearboxes, VersaFrame, bearings, gears, all these common items that we have a really good idea, a good feeling of what we're going to be using. And then we kind of do like a two-pronged approach, right? So we order all that stuff in early before the season, and then on day one when the game is released, we do another big round of ordering for anything that we may have missed that we think are good, we might use for this year's game specifically. I guess this year we ordered a bunch of the compliant wheels, for example, to manipulate the cubes, because we know that those would probably go out of stock. But for us, it's all about preparation and anticipating. We want to order what we think we're going to need early and not have to worry about things being out of stock when we really need it. So yeah, order early, anticipate what you're going to need, and go from there.
So, Alan, you being around the block just like these other two, I'm sure you're going to give me a similar type answer, but I'd like to expand it when we get your answer for that. So, in addition to if you do purchase the similar way, how do you purchase? Do you use it a PO or do you use a credit card? How does your team purchase things?
So we're a slightly different situation. So one, our team is built, basically it's myself and 30 to 40 kids every year. We don't have basically almost any other technical mentors. So I end up doing most of the ordering as well. We have a Slack channel where if the kids want to say, hey, I know we're going to need this, they just throw it in there. And I figure it out most of the time. If we have a kid who's really interested in something, like I'll let them more into that, but rarely are we training people to be like a treasurer or anything. I just handle that because I have the school credit card and all of that just goes through really easily because we're two private schools, so it's a lot easier. There's much less paperwork for us. We also do some of our stuff because we are on a relatively well-off team now. We have a pretty decent budget, but I'm from teams that didn't. So I still carry a lot of that with me. So I'm willing to save a buck in a lot of ways. So I'll buy stuff from China and wait the month and a half to get it over here by the slow boat if I have to. So we have, some of the bearings that I know we're going to need for our extension arm this year are probably on a boat that will come for the real one towards the end of build season. But I can get them for a third the price of what I would get them if I bought US ones. So we'll do a lot of stuff like that to save a buck if we have to.
I never thought about purchasing from China. That's brilliant. As a rookie mentor, that's something I'll keep in my brain for next year.
Yeah, we'll do most of a preseason. I bought all of our pneumatic fittings that way. I bought quite a few cylinders that way. A lot of stuff that you can get where you don't have to have a middleman to do it.
Nice. So all great answers. I thank you guys for doing that. I have more questions for you in procurement. So Libby, I got another one for you. Ready? I didn't know about First Choice. I had no idea. I've been around FRC robotics for a couple years, but I was never a purchasing mentor or a technical mentor. I was more of a support mentor. So tell us a little bit about First Choice with Andy Mark and how that happens.
Sure. So, First Choice, I guess I'll keep it kind of high level because I also just took on our lead mentor role this year. And so First Choice happened before, or the first round of First Choice happened before I took over our team. So I get the high level explanation as well. And maybe down the line, folks can be a little more specific. But essentially, one of the ways that Andy Mark supports First and is a supplier in all of those wonderful things that they do is help maintain and structure First Choice. So basically, you get a number of credits to each team. What's 400 in the first round, right? 400. And through that, you are able to set what's called a priority list in First Choice. And you get to say, if I could spend these, don't want to say imaginary points, they're obviously real, but like these imaginary dollars on products at Andy Mark, I would like this first. And then if I can't get that, I would like this instead. And you kind of make this list. And through some magical math and voodoo magic, after all the teams have submitted their priority lists, the teams will be assigned, this is what you got in First Choice. And things that are in there are, I'm trying to think of what we got on First Choice this year, but things that you would commonly either find in the kit or something that you would buy COTS for your robots. So I think this year we got a robot compressor, like the air compressor, we got a couple batteries, some talons, so control systems components, and just general products that you might already be buying. But those First Choice credits are a way to, it comes as what I guess is considered part of the virtual kit, right? As it's a part of what is provided to teams for being an FRC team, much like the vouchers, which, by the way, if you don't know about First Choice, you might not know about the vouchers. All of the virtual kit product donation vouchers that come from different suppliers of First. But First Choice is one of the more detailed and effort-intensive things to redeem within that virtual kit.
So, Josh, can you expand on that discussion a little bit and how Team Rush do they use the First Choice? I'm sure they use it, but do you guys use that as vital parts for your robot, or do you guys just have it as a nice to have, maybe stock up on things that might break during the season?
Yeah, honestly, I think we mainly utilize it as an extra. If there's something that the kids want to look at, there's the 3D printing, like the MakerBot, we'll use our credits for that. We don't use it for critical items, I guess. If there's a motor that we want to get, then we can get that, but we don't rely on the First Choice credits for anything, I think, that we feel is critical. All like I mentioned, all of that is usually ordered ahead of time, or it's something that we know that's game specific, and it's just kind of like an extra thing that we do.
And Alan, so you've worked with teams that have limited budgets, similar to the one I'm using. So to me, it's vital. This First Choice was vital to me to get some of the stuff that I needed to get. Have you experienced that in your past?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things, I didn't take it as seriously this year, but I used to treat it as like a big puzzle because they assign a credit value to every part, and that credit in every part also has a dollar value. So we would go through and we would basically make a big spreadsheet of what was the actual real life value in dollars to credits and figure out how we could basically make the most bang for our buck in First Choice. A lot of times now that'll be done for you. If you surf Cheap Delphi enough, you can find somebody else will have the spreadsheet pretty much done for you. One of my friends on another team here in Houston, Andrew Hartnett, does one most years. And you can go through and realize, okay, I know I'm going to need to get a couple speed controllers. I'm going to need to get a new PDP for this robot if I don't want to strip the one off of last year's, things that you don't get in the kit of parts every year. That's what most of the young teams should be getting. If you can get your new control system parts that you don't have to go and spend $200 on another PDP every year, that can save you a lot of money. And that's what we normally do.
So one more question I have for procurement, and then we'll move into the second major subject for this podcast. Libby, if you could give some advice, you're a head mentor now. You have mentor experience all around, it seems, in your teams that you've guided. So what is one thing that you can help a rookie team with? How can you give some advice to a rookie team that might think they're underneath the water at this point? They're trying to design, and we're going to talk about that in a couple of minutes. but from procurement, trying to order COTS devices, trying to occupy time while stuff comes in, because we haven't had the chance to order stuff ahead of time. Give us a little piece of advice for a rookie team.
Okay. So I think at this point in the season, we've finished week 2, we're heading into week 3. Hopefully teams have a picture of at least what they think they want to accomplish. Not related to procurement in any way, but I will always put in my advice to rookies or to anyone really, read the manual, read it again, read every team update, read it again, familiarize yourself with the Q&A. That has nothing to do with procurement. I understand. Sorry for diverting from the question, but please, please, please arrive at your events aware of all of the official first statements on the rules and updates made to you. It will save you a whole lot of trouble. But with regard specifically to like the build season and having stuff come in, this might maybe have been more useful advice perhaps a week ago or so, but if you're still waiting for stuff to come in, there's no reason that you can't make what I like to call ugly prototypes of the same thing. Ugly prototypes, no offense meant to them, are like stuff made out of pizza boxes and popsicle sticks and like binder clips and just total, proof of concept nonsense. You can kind of, if depending on what you have around you, if you're a rookie who really has nothing, maybe this week is a time to like very, very in a detailed way sketch out exactly what you're going to cut off of that COTS part when it comes in, so you don't have to measure 5 times. You measure twice, and then you don't have to reorder it. I think there's a lot to be said for careful planning while you're waiting for stuff to come in, because sometimes teams get a box of parts and go, "Wee, I can build anything now. I have all this metal," and then all of a sudden at the end of the week you're out again. So I guess if you've truly got nothing in your pockets, nothing in your shop at all, and you are waiting for your stuff to come in, make that a time for detailed design review, which I think we'll get to what we're talking about in a little bit. But make that a time to really, really think about how you're tackling the problem and make sure that you're going to be able to manufacture correctly. And as always, situation independent for rookies, for any team at all. Make sure that you are both designing and building within your means to make sure that your goals are realistic. Make sure that you're setting your season up for success by not stretching too far and, making your goals attainable, and you will make an awesome robot from that.
And Josh, can you give us some advice for a rookie team?
Yeah, sure. I agree with a lot of what Libby said, and it's all about, I believe, resource management. So if you're a rookie team or a young team, you really do have to be realistic about what you can build and how you're going to build it. You have to design, with material availability in mind. You can't, if you don't have access to a water jet or a laser cutter, don't be designing things in CAD that's going to require that kind of stuff. And then you want to get it outsourced from a sponsor or, things like that. You just need to utilize COTS components, utilize a VersaFrame, utilize, gussets and things like that, and, build within your means. This is a race, right? It's not necessarily, it's not a marathon. So you kind of have to prepare as much as you can and build within your means and just be realistic about your goals. While you're waiting for parts to arrive, I think, what Libby suggested, a detailed design review is totally on point. A detailed design review, as well as, keep iterating those prototypes. You can always make it better somehow. And if you're just waiting around for parts to come in, figure out how to make your widget a little bit better, a little bit faster, or a little bit stronger to give you the best chance to play the game most effectively.
And Alan, do you have anything to add to that for a rookie team?
The main piece of advice I always give rookie teams is that they should always ask for more help and ask more questions. I don't know of a single rookie team that asks enough of the veterans. Like, there's so much to know in FRC, and there's just no way to know it all your first year. I'm 15 years in, and I'm learning new stuff every single day. And almost everywhere around the country, there are teams who are veterans who've done this before, who are willing to help you. I have a mentor coming here probably within the next hour to get pickup parts. We had somebody come in yesterday to pick up parts because they just don't have time to wait for an order or something. And we can loan them stuff that we just have on hand that we're not using that they can use and then either give it back to us. And a lot of times we just don't even care if we get it back. But there's so many teams around that you can get help from if you're just willing to ask. you can get advice from them too. Like send another team a photo of your robot or your design and say, hey, does this make sense? And get feedback. Like I love when people give us feedback. We post our entire designs on our blog and on Facebook and everywhere else. And my favorite thing is when some mentor goes, hey, why are you doing this? There's a better way. I appreciate that so much.
Oh, I can't, as a rookie mentor, I thank every one of you for giving some of that. I'm making notes as you guys are talking. And I'll make more tomorrow as I'm editing. So thank you for all those pieces of advice for our rookie team. So the next and final subject we wanted to talk about tonight is design iteration, or design and iterations to your design. So I'm actually going to start with Alan this time. Alan, tell us about your design process for your team and how you guys go about, once you guys have what you think is a solid design, how to iterate off that.
That's funny. So what we think is a solid design is not always solid. We have definitely been one of the teams who's known to change course pretty dramatically in the middle of a season before. Hopefully not this year. We think we're going down the right track this year, but we have changed course all the way to like taking a robot out of the bag at our first event, completely disassembling it down to 2 drivetrain rails and building a whole new one at our first event before, when we realized it was just wrong. So never think it's too late. Like if you build something you don't like, it's always okay to iterate. And sometimes that means back to the beginning. But for most of what we try to do is we try to have an actual design process. We go, here are the requirements for whatever the subsystem is. Like we're working a lot of our intake right now for the cubes. And we knew we wanted to be able to quickly intake in the open field when we're basically driving at a cube, and also intake from a cube that's on the wall or something we're going to have to suck it in or suck it out. And those are 2 pretty distinct tasks a lot of times. Like you may be able to get a single motion that can do that, but sometimes you'll need multiple things to be able to do that, and we want to be able to test that. So we've gone through a couple different iterations on a design we think can do it, but we still have to be able to make it smaller and still meet all those prototype specs. So we try to have the students document their process. So we have a build blog, we have a robot design sheet where we log a lot of our tests, and we log the different prototype information from it, like what we used, what we tested, how it worked out. So that when we build the next version, we can actually iterate on what we learned and make it even better. We also do the same thing where we're iterating on things from previous years. If we know we had a drivetrain we liked, we'll be able to take measurements from that, know exactly how it worked, how the gearbox worked, whatever we need to do, and be able to iterate on it for this year and make it even better and fix the problems from previous seasons as well.
And Josh, how does Team Rush go about their design process and the iteration process after that?
Sure. So, we come out of our game analysis and design meetings, the first weekend. And what we really try to do is to kind of identify 2 or 3 maybe major, design high-level concepts, right? So do we want a roller claw, or do we want a launcher? Do we want an elevator versus a 4-bar arm design? Or do we want to pick up robots while we hang, or do we want to have a robot hang off of us type of questions? So based on that, we have these high-level concepts, and then we kind of go from there. And prototyping is really about finding out what doesn't work, I think, and through that you narrow it down to what does work. So by prototyping, as many ideas and high-level concepts as fast as possible to find out what doesn't work, it will lead you to solutions that are achievable and will work for your team.
And finally, Libby, how does your team go about the design process from the beginning and then iterate off that?
Yeah, sure. So I think before I kind of launch into how 1923 does things, I want to make one point that both Alan and Josh have brought up that I really want to, if you're listening, underline, highlight, gold stars all around it. Both of you guys mentioned that when you go into a concept of a robot, you have goals for it. You have specs, whatever word you use to call them. I have seen teams, and I've been on teams, that go through the analysis and design process and just go okay, we're going to have a pickup. Okay, well, what kind of pickup? Is it going to be fast? Is it going to be able to get things in any orientation? Be specific, because you don't know what metric you're making your prototype better, in quotes. Sorry, I talk with my hands. I have to say better, in quotes. What we'll
get to the video recording sooner or later. That's our next step.
What metric are you measuring better against? Or is it better at releasing the game piece in a consistent fashion? Is it better at just putting it wherever but very quickly? So my point is, when it comes to robot concepts, if you don't already have a set of, if you want to call them specs, if you want to call them goals, whatever you design, I've already forgot the word I wanted to use, like design attributes for that specific concept, I think that's where you're going to, first of all, that's where you know the bar is as you go to iterate your designs. So you could spend a whole bunch of time making your intake faster, but actually that makes it way more difficult to bring it in a consistent alignment. So maybe faster isn't better. That was just the point that came up to me while you guys were talking about your processes, because we have the same kind of thing. But I actually wanted to get a little bit more granular on, if it's okay, Pete, on how our team like talks through the actual design change, because our overall process is very similar to Alan and Josh, right? We make a prototype, figure out what doesn't work, figure out what we hate about it, try to find specs that will make it better at that thing, test it, break it, make a new one, iterate as continued. But specifically within the course of, for example, a week of build season, our team is huge. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. We're about 115 people, students, like just high schoolers, not counting the mentors. I would not wish that on anyone. It's huge and at times like herding cats, but because of that, we have to work in much smaller groups just for the safety of our space. So documentation and talking about our design and talking through it, at least internally, becomes a whole new challenge for us. So we've developed a system pretty much where the beginning of every meeting is documented as far as everybody gathers up at the board and says, what are our goals today? Whether you're on the drivetrain group or the electrical group or the programming, let's throw it all on the board. Here's what needs to get done today. And in a lot of cases, when I talk about specific design iteration, it might be make the intake faster. Doesn't have to be specific actionable goals, but just overall, what's the plan for today for each sub-team? But even in one given day, we don't have every student on the team in, so they might not see that. So one of the things that I really want to harp on for teams that are listening, looking maybe to improve their design or iteration process, not that we have it perfectly at all, is we take what we put on the board at the beginning of the day, what we put on the board at the end of the meeting. Like no one can go home until everyone has put back up, this is what we got done, they've reported back in. We put all of that into what we call an engineering notebook, but isn't really. It just sort of, we've adopted the term from our FTC teams, right? It's the same format. There's a book. If you needed to recreate a robot, this is how you would do it. I know, for example, Alan's got the build blog, just something that is documentable for what is done each day. And what I find super helpful with that, and the reason I wanted to bring it up, is the more you document, the more you're going to avoid recreating the thing you didn't like. Like I have seen so many prototyping processes go through where you make the, I'm just going to use intakes because it's what's on my mind this week. You make the intake, you try this thing, you try that thing. Oh, well, we hate that thing. So let's try something else. And because it's the kid who wasn't there when we tried thing one, we're just back around the circle at thing one and we're wasting everybody's time. And so it's, as far as when we talk about building within resources, remember that time is one of your resources. And so when we iterate on design, like the guys have said, we take something and we say, is it meeting the specifications we want? If it's not, just continue to work through that and try to make it better and faster. But our big key about it, because our team is so massive, is to document every step of that, whether it's like photos and videos are my favorite thing, but CAD drawings, even just scratch notes on paper, really, really documenting what you are doing meeting to meeting just helps you avoid sliding back down the hill. Or conversely, if you like what you did 3 days ago and you realize you want to go back, you have a record of exactly what you had set up on a prototype. The only other thing I think that is really, I don't know if it's different because we're big, but it's what has worked for us because we're a bigger group, is that we have not only a lot of students, but therefore a lot of student leaders. And so we basically pick one of our student leaders. There's captains and there's directors on our team, but whatever your terminology is. And each director or captain is basically a project manager for a particular subsystem. So even if we don't have the whole team in on a particular day, I know that Jimmy's always my fake student. That's the name I use. Jimmy is going to know everything about the intake. When I have a question, when someone else has a question, when a freshman that wasn't here for a week because they were sick has a question, Jimmy is the expert. Not to say that they make every decision, but just that they know what is up with that subsystem. And so being able to develop kind of an expert on something, at least to help keep everybody on the same page, is what I find very helpful about the process. Other than that, we kind of line up with what Ellen and Josh have said. Break it, figure out what you hate, fix what you don't like, and try to get better against your own metrics for whatever your prototype is.
All three approaches totally make sense. Some commonality between the three, but all make sense to me. And I'm just learning. So the next question I have for you guys, Alan, is do you think that week one, when we go into week one, the game is fresh, right? It's like, I'll take an example. Last year at Steamworks, everyone wanted to run as many gears as possible. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, they definitely wanted to try.
So at week 4, the game kind of changed and fuel became more important because people wanted to get that 40 kPa and get that ranking point as well. Do you agree with that?
Somewhat. Fuel became more important because everybody was able to do gears better. And once
Right.
you're able to get to a 4 rotors, then you have more time to do the rest of the game.
You had to do something different, right? You had to do something to call yourself out to make you different than everyone trying to run gears. So what do you think this year's gear running is going to be, and what do you think the change in week 4 is going to be? Do you have any idea so far?
Oh man, predicting the evolution of an FRC strategy. That's fun.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. So
Yeah,
let's do it.
that is definitely hard to tell. It's going to be interesting. I mean, the scale is definitely going to win early just because it's going to be harder for some teams to even score on the scale at all, right? There's going to be qual matches where if you can put a single cube on the scale, you're going to win because the other team just can't early on, where like their lifts aren't working, whatever their mechanism are. It's by no means the hardest task we've ever had. It's one of the lower high goals. It's a pretty big opening. It's a doable task for a lot of teams, but at the beginning, it's going to be difficult. As we move on, you're going to see the scale start switching orders a lot more and people taking over their opponent's switches. And how you hold your own switch or how you steal your opponent's switch is going to determine a lot more matches than the balance of the scale, because it's going to be hard to maintain the scale the whole time just because of the dynamics of it, how it's going to flip to side, and it's just hard to keep a lot of cubes on it as it's flipping.
Josh, answer the same question. What do you think week 1's going to be compared to week 4? I know we're totally theorizing at this point, so there's no wrong answer, right?
So I think, right, so everybody goes out week 1, nobody really knows what's going on, and they're trying to just make sure their robot's working properly for the most part, right? So, I really think, week 1, you're going to see, people getting their scale, or getting the scale and getting their switch, right? And as the game evolves, that's going to translate and go further across the field and say, okay, not only do I have to manage the switch and the scale, but now I want to actively try and prevent their switch, to balance that point difference. Another thing that I think people are going to overlook a lot in week 1 and not really utilize is the vault. People, utilizing the boost power up, at critical times, either to, lock out your opponent from using their power up, or getting those bonus points when you control the scale for that amount of time. That's going to be a critical thing that I think people are going to either overlook in the early weeks, and then that strategy is going to evolve as we get into further weeks. I think what's really going to come down to, and what this game is going to evolve into, is Auton is going to be so important. And as the weeks go on, I think you're going to see more and more complicated Auton development and execution to either be placing cubes on the scale in Auton, or going across the field to the opposite side to put the cube on your switch, or so things like that. The level is going to get higher and higher as the weeks go on, as we know. But I think the major things are going to be, utilizing the vault when you can and at the right times, and, getting those Autons to get the rank points, because ranking high and getting high qualification seeding, is all about rank points. And how do you do that? You get that with all 3 robots getting their Autons and the cube and the switch, and you get it for hanging. Is the triple hang, is that going to happen? Who knows? We'll see. But, getting those rank points is obviously, the key to, being successful.
All right, Lebby, do you agree with them? Do you have something totally out of left field you think is going to happen between 1 and 4, weeks 1 and 4?
I don't know if there's going to be anything hugely, out of left field, but it's funny because I try to be the best podcast guest I can and like write notes for myself as you're asking other people questions. And of course, you guys hit everything that I wanted to say. Thanks. I liked the orientation where I went first better. I felt a little smarter. But the other thing that I guess I want to touch on. Well, first of all, the vault. I think there are so many discussions, and I've heard it on my own team. I've heard it on other teams where you are totally right, Josh. Teams are just forgetting that the vault exists. It's like everyone is focused on the mechanical design problem of getting the cube up onto the scale or onto the switch or picking it up or whatever they're thinking about, that maybe they're just, it's too early in the build season to start thinking about it for particular teams. But there's this ignoring the vault other than, yes, we put the cube back in through the exchange. And so I really think that it's not necessarily that it's going to change strategically, but managing the dynamic of match flow is going to change. So I also drive coach for 1923 because I don't have enough to do in my life. And when this game came out, I was so excited because this is going to both excited and like a little bit terrified, but this is going to be a game with such a different dynamic behind the glass as far as what is happening in a match, right? You're not just saying alliance partner A, do this thing, alliance partner B, do this thing, and then I'll do my thing and we'll all stay in our own columns and play the game. This is truly not only a collaborative dynamic, but then there's also this whole extra thing of I need a human player I can trust who knows when to run the different power-ups, what we're going to do. Actually, something I suggested, Pete, I don't know if we're allowed to mention other shows, but I'm also a host on First Updates Now. We talked about the quarterback play sleeve and giving your human player like a little sleeve to wear of like, if this is the match condition, play this power-up. On the First Updates Now Candidly Speaking show that I was on last week, because it's just such a different dynamic. So I don't know that strategy is entirely going to, not that anything is going to change around it between, say, week 1 and week 4 or week 1 and championship, but I think teams are going to remember that it's there. We're playing week 1, so I'm a little bit nervous to see how that plays out in early play, and I think it'll get smoother over time. The other thing that I guess I just don't really have an answer for, but I've been bouncing around in my head is it going to be 3 climbs or is it going to be this ramp bot? What meta is going to win out? What's going to be easier for teams to do? And I do think you're going to see more, whatever you want to call it, because you can't necessarily say that 3 robots are going to climb, but 3 sets of climb points later in the season as opposed to earlier. I think that's going to be so hard to figure out early on. I mean, you can look, as far as directly climbing, you can probably look at the stats from, 17, but also 2016 of how often did teams actually get that, what was called scale at the time, in early play versus in later season play. And I think that's just going to be kind of something that always happens in FRC, but I'm really interested to see how the dynamic of power-ups changes, like Josh said.
Well, you guys are making me feel a little bit better as being a rookie mentor, because the one thing that our team is focused on is actually the vault. We're building a vault bot. Just because I think it was easier for us to approach rather than putting cubes up on top of that switch. I'm a single mentor on my team right now. I hope to get more mentors on my team. I have some students, but they're in college, so their availability is a little limited. But you're making me feel a little bit better about building a vault bot this year. So thanks for doing that for me.
Pete, can I make a comment on that really quickly? Because it came up when we were talking about advice for rookies, and I didn't want to interject as we were moving on to a different topic. But now that you've kind of put it in that frame, I want to tack back onto the advice for rookies or for any team is that simple is not the enemy. There are so many teams who are like, oh, we're just doing a vault bot, or we're just doing a switch. We're just doing one of the game challenges. And I think it's really important to remember that there's nothing wrong with that, because that means you're focusing your energy on doing something really well and being the expert at that. And there are a lot of teams who I think get hung up in the idea that they have to do more different objectives to be what they call competitive, when I actually think that's very much not the case, especially for a team who's thinking through the problem and thinking through answering the problem within their means. But I'm really glad you brought that up. Is you shouldn't first just the fact that you said I'm feeling better. You shouldn't have to have felt badly about that. And I think that's an important message just to the first community in general is simple is not the enemy because simple can be really, really effective. So please don't forget that as you go through the rest of your build season, as you're thinking about having to cut things or make things harder or spend more resources.
Right. If I can just jump on that as well a little bit. Again, I think it all comes back to knowing your team, knowing what resources you have available. These days, last few years, there's release videos and Robot in 3 days. Like there's so many resources out there, other teams to ask questions that, there's so many resources that I think that go unutilized every year. And, they're out there for people to use. And like Libby said, if you'd rather be better at, one thing than be very mediocre at all things, as alliance selection goes on, teams are going to be looking for the robot that does one or two things very, very well. And if you can focus all your energy and be, that robot, then you're going to be successful. Both you're going to feel good because you accomplished what you set out to do for the season. You didn't overachieve and then possibly fail what you were looking to do for the season. It's all around. Like simple is better. Do what you can do within your means and go from there.
Yeah. I just want to bring up.
Do you have any? Yeah, I knew you were going to say.
So yeah, the last thing. So he was bringing up Robot in 3 days, and this year there was a great resources put out by a few students that I know. One was alumni on my team, and two of the Robonauts alumni, called the Robonauts EveryBot. That is $750 of parts after the kit of parts, and can play the game at a very good level. Like you can exchange to do the switch. You can put in the vault. You can play on the opposite side of the field and get from the portals. You will play better than a lot of robots for an extremely low amount of money and amount of actual build time, because they have an entire document on how they build it, tons of pictures, everything you would need to even build a robot very similar that you can get the design, get inspired by it, design something similar, or design something similar at least to the task that it does, and play this game without ever having to try to reach for the scale or how to climb or anything like that. That's on the much higher end of complexity.
We gave that team, the Robonauts, we actually gave the team of the week last week too, just for that simple fact that they had a bunch of students that went out there and wanted to do something to give to the rest of the community, to myself as a rookie, and all rookie teams or second-year teams that are struggling, to give them something that they can actually prove on the field. And there was some practice footage.
Right.
I went to some Robot in 3 days practice.
Oh, so I can talk about that a little bit. So that was the MC Cube, the minimum competitive concept competition. So that was actually started by one of the Robot in 3 days teams that's around the Houston area, Orion. Vin is one of the head people for that. He's an alumni of Jersey Voltage, and he decided we had enough Robot in 3 days teams around Houston, and we had this EveryBot group that was starting up with Robonauts alumni and one of the Spectrum alumni. So they did it at FRC 1477's new headquarters, their new lab that has a full field. So they were able to build a full field and actually compete the first week of the season. So they had 4 full robots and then a couple other ones that were basically just like chassis that they could play with. So there's a lot of footage of that, so you can actually see something close to a power-up match actually happening with robots designed for the game and everything.
Yeah, we used that footage in one of my meetings, and I just took the first 25 minutes of my meeting, and I showed the kids, because my kids have never done anything with FRC before. So I've never been able to take them to a competition, see what it's like, and I'm trying to educate the kids on our drive team and how they get set up and what their viewpoints are, and that all helped us. It helped everyone in that room understand what's going to go on this year. So for anyone involved in that, thank you for doing it, because it really opened kids' eyes a lot.
Yeah, I was very happy with how that turned out, and we were lucky enough to even get footage. I was just filmed by one of the students, was a senior on my team last year, and he just happened to be there and was filming it and sent me the footage so we could upload it.
Yeah, and we got some good if you watch that footage, there's some the cameraman is actually talking about it, and that's
Yan Yao. Yeah,
that's pretty funny to listen to.
Yeah, he was the Spectrum driver for the past 3 years.
Nice. So we're 45 minutes. We've been recording for 45 minutes, so it's time to let you guys go, get some sleep so you guys can get ready for work tomorrow and then build some more tomorrow night. I want to thank everyone here for coming onto the podcast, giving us the time on a Sunday night, taking time away from your personal life, because I hope you guys aren't building robots at 9 o'clock at night or 8 o'clock at night, but it is build season. So as you guys sign out, please tell us again your name, the team number you're on, and how we can follow your team. And Libby, we're going to start with you.
Okay, so yeah, thanks you so much for having me, Pete. This is really fun. Happy to join again, but I get it if you have to edit me too much and you don't want me back. So I am with Team 1923. It's the Midnight Inventors out of the West Windsor-Plainsboro Regional School District in New Jersey. You can find us. We've got a Facebook page. We've got Twitter. We've got our own website. Everything is FRC1923. It's very, very easy. We try to keep it standardized so that teams can find us. And I'm sure my media students will love interacting with you, so I hope you drop on by and pay us a visit.
If I ever make it there, I will. I live in Michigan, so maybe maybe we'll see each other at Worlds.
Maybe you know what? Let's make it a plan. Well, I'll cross my fingers for us and for y'all to see you at Worlds.
Okay, Josh, you're up next.
All right. Again, my name is Josh Fritsch from Team Rush FRC 27. You can follow us at Team Rush 27 on Twitter. TeamRush27.net is our website. And again, if any rookie team is out there listening, and you need advice or have questions, feel free to either ask a question from our contact page on our website or, shoot a message on Twitter. We're always monitoring it and we'll help you out as best we can.
And finally, Alan.
All right, yeah, so I'm Alan Gregory. If you want to contact me directly, Alan Gregory IV on Chief Delphi. For the team, it's Spectrum 3847 out of Houston, Texas. We're at most of the Texas events, and our website is spectrum3847.org. We also have a blog on there that we update nightly where we are completely open with our design. We also have all of the CAD that we've done this year. It gets published whenever I remember to actually push the publish button. So all of that's pretty much updated as of at least last night. So you can follow along with what we're building. We also are on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Spectrum3847. Any of those, go basically ping my phone most of the time and several of the kids' phones too. So we're almost always available to answer questions or chat or whatever you want to know or however we can help.
Up now is the RoboZone Rookie Rundown.
Hi, this is Pete Ekman with the RoboZone Podcast. With me tonight, I have the infamous Brandy Bollinger from 2337. How you doing tonight, Brandy?
I am phenomenal. How are you, Pete?
I'm good. So me and Brandy are going to do a new segment on the RoboZone Podcast all throughout this this season, the Power Up season. We're going to call this Rookie Roundup, and this is a special section for the rookies, which Brandy's she hosts a call that you have with rookies, correct?
Yep, along with Team 2337, we got Jason Marcassino and Kylie Hughes from Team 27, and then Clinton and I.
Very well-rounded group. I've been on that call. I was negligent as a rookie mentor and missed the call last week, so I'm glad I'm catching up with you. So what we're going to do for this segment is we're going to give them 3 to 5 things that were covered in that call from last week, and then 3 things that we're going to hold rookies or inform rookies what they want to do this coming week, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so Brandy, give it to us. What were the 5 things out of the rookie call last week?
All right. First and foremost, if you do not have a moving, wired, programmed basic chassis, now is the time to ask for help. Most of the rookie teams in Michigan were assigned a mentor team, and if you were not, there are plenty of teams like Team 2337 and I'm sure Team Rush that would be more than happy to help you out. So just give us a call if you do not have something moving at this point. If you're having programming problems, electrical problems, mechanical problems, whatever your problem is that's preventing you from having a moving chassis, we want to help you solve it this week.
So that's number 1. Give us number 2.
Number 2, you should, once you have your moving chassis, write an auton for move forward so that you can help your alliance get the mobility point in autonomous. If you're having trouble, again, with the programming in autonomous, there are so many teams that could help you. There are multiple programming languages available for FIRST Robotics teams, and we encourage you to use whichever one your team has the greatest number of resources with. But just reach out to a team if you're having trouble. If not, just write a code to move forward for 5 seconds. And it doesn't have to be at 100% speed. You can be at 50% speed or 30% speed. So just take a look at the rules and find out what you need to do to get that mobility ranking point and do your part to be part of the alliance.
Number 3.
Number 3, we strongly encourage teams to watch the minimum competitive concept competition that Spectrum Robotics out of Texas held a couple of weekends ago. It's a really great opportunity for teams to see some robots, some minimum competitive concepts, some robots that you can take the kit parts chassis and add a mechanism to add some functionality that will make you a contributing member of an alliance. There's a lot of robots on there that used basic things, and then I'll say MCC plus, the minimum competitive concept, plus a little bit more for those teams who are rookie teams or who are low resource teams but do have some capabilities available. Take a look at that. You can look it up on YouTube and check that out for a lot of inspiration, especially if you're having trouble coming up with some ideas that are within your resources.
We just interviewed Spectrum yesterday, so they're going to be on this podcast. So we had the head mentor for Spectrum yesterday on the podcast. So when people are listening to this, they'll put 2 and 2 together. So we're cohesiveness. I love it, Brandy.
You interview Alan because he's amazing.
Yes, we interviewed Alan. Yep.
So my piece of advice for this then is listen to what Alan says.
So go back, rewind, because this is going to be after the round table. So go back and rewind and listen to that again. So number 4, Brandy. What's number 4?
Have your team's logo solidified. So about this time of year is the time that you really need to start thinking about this. And Pete, you and I had a pretty in-depth conversation about this, I think on one of the very first times that I was featured on RoboZone, about picking your team logo and about making it something that is simple to screen and simple to have embroidered. Because the more detail and the more colors you add, then it becomes more expensive for screen printing, and it becomes more expensive for embroidery because you have to have a higher thread count, and it's just a mess. So our recommendation is something that is either 1 or 2 colors or can be made into 1 or 2 colors for screen printing and embroidery. You can have an awesome digital image for your website and other electronic formats, but make sure that you have something that's usable. And
go ahead.
And just remember that some teams choose or choose not to incorporate their school's image into theirs. Our team decided when we started our team in 2008 that we were going to go away from the Grand Blanc Bobcats and not be the RoboCats or Bobcat Robotics. We went with the Engine Nerds to try to bring some light to the fact that it's pretty cool to be a nerd. However, we decided to keep our school's colors. Our team colors are black and red, just like Grand Blanc.
And finally, number 5 for last week's call.
Number 5, start getting shirt orders. So all of these logos and things that you guys are doing, your shirts, depending on which districts you're going to, could need up to 3 to 4 week lead time. So if you want to have uniforms for your first competition that aren't white shirts that you picked up at Joann's and use Sharpies on, I would highly recommend that you start collecting shirt sizes from your students and getting pricing for your shirts. If you're planning on providing shirts for your mentors or allowing your parents on your team to provide shirts, start collecting these things now, because it is definitely a big job. This is something that I recruit parents on my team to help with, especially those non-mentor parents, moms and dads, sisters and brothers who are looking for a way to help. So here up in Grand Blanc in the Flint area, we use Flint City t-shirts. They're located in downtown Flint. They do phenomenal work at great pricing, and I would highly recommend either going with them or maybe looking into see if your school has a screen printing service that they do, or if maybe you have a local screen printing place in your town that might be willing to partner with your team as well.
Perfect. So thank you for surmising what was the call for last week. So now let's change and flip the script. What are the 3 things that rookie teams should be focusing on this week?
This week, I definitely think one of the most important things is, if you haven't already started doing so, do some pretty heavy prototyping on some kind of manipulator. You're going to want to look at a way to move the cube, maybe pick up the cube, maybe score the cube, to do something with the cube. Even if you've decided that you're going to be a vault bot, making sure that whatever you're putting on the front of your robot can manipulate the cube and keep it within your control when you're driving around the field. So this week, I really strongly consider teams to work on that prototyping. If you've already been working on prototyping, try to start moving toward production versions of these things. Start ordering your materials to make them out of the stronger material and something that's going to be robust. Remember, you're going to 2 events and hopefully you're qualifying for states and maybe even the world championship with this thing. And it is going to need repairs along the way, but if you build it robust from the beginning, then you're going to spend a lot less time doing that later.
And that for rookie teams, they can even have wood. Who knows?
Absolutely. Wood does tend to get a little bit heavy. PVC is a good choice. It's also pretty heavy, but there's a lot of different kinds of plastics that are pretty lightweight that are readily available as well. If you're in the mid-Michigan area, a lot of places that you can go to Elro Steel. You have to order it. It's 24 hours in advance. You can go to places like Sorok Plastics, Home Depot, so many of these places that do carry plastic as well. Oh, and you can order it from Andy Mark. Also, he does sell 24-inch by 24-inch sheets of plastic.
Nice. So that's number 1. What's number 2, Brandy, for this week?
Order your bumper material for all teams. This is not just rookie teams. All teams, order your bumper material. We talked to the lead inspector from Michigan last year, and the number 1 reason teams did not pass inspection at their first event was illegal bumpers. So please, teams, we encourage you to order your bumper material now. And if you're a rookie team, look in the coupon book from your kit of parts and you receive a discount. I think it might even be free. Don't quote me on that, but it's pretty close to free, if not free, from Robo Promos, which is a local Michigan company. So you can order your red material, your blue material, mounting brackets, and your numbers all through Robo Promo. And he will actually, if you do not have someone to press your numbers on for you for a small fee, Mike at Robo Promos will also put your numbers on your bumper material for you and mail it to you ready to be put on your robot.
I have that kit. I actually went with all the bells and whistles. So I did the 6-inch front.
I've heard that it is high quality, very easy to use, and that Mike, I've dealt with Mike a lot. He's a phenomenal guy.
I bought the reversible ones too, so I don't have to change out the bumpers.
Boom, done.
Done. I don't have to worry. I just have to find pool noodles, but I think I can find them at Andy Mark. So.
Yes, you can.
And finally, number 3, Brandy. What's number 3 for this week?
And this one also applies to not just rookie teams, but also veteran teams. There are 2 important award deadlines coming up that you really want to start thinking about for the students on the teams. The Woody Flowers Award submissions are due through STIMS on Thursday, February 8th. So that only gives you a couple of weeks to put together an essay to nominate your favorite mentor on your team. And then the first Dean's List Award is due on TIMS, which is the Team Information Management System for coaches, on Thursday, February 15th. And that is to nominate up to 2 students on your team that have shown extraordinary leadership and you believe deserve recognition. So
and what years do they have to be? Because there's certain years they have to be, right?
Yep. It is sophomores and juniors. They highly recommend sophomores this year. It used to be able to be seniors, and they've changed it along the way. So make sure that you log on to the award section of First's website and look at the criteria for the Woody Flowers Award and for the Dean's List Award. There are bullet points provided on there for you of specific qualities that they're looking for in each of these people. And it's a really great way for students to recognize the efforts of their mentors, and for mentors, while they love every student on their team, this is an opportunity to point out 2 students who have gone above and beyond and shown extraordinary leadership skills and made an impact on the First community and their team.
Perfect. So this is the first episode of this segment. We'll continue to do this throughout as long as Brandy has the time to do it. And I've never known Brandy turn my interview down. So I'm sure we'll hear from you in the coming weeks. Is there anything else you want to tell us, Brandy, to put it out on the podcast really quick?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll do a quick plug for a new thing that the Engineers are doing, which is our new Engine Live show every Wednesday at 7 o'clock. We're going live on YouTube answering people's questions. So if you hear this podcast and you think of a question that you might have that you want us to answer, either for this week on the Engine Live or for me to talk about more next week on the Rookie Roundout, then please feel free to watch us 7 p.m. on the Engineers YouTube channel, and we'll be there to answer your questions.
Perfect, Brandy. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for taking time out of your busy Monday night. I know you're tired. I'm tired. We all got to get some sleep and get ready for tomorrow night, right?
That's right. Always ready for the next day.
Up next is the RoboZone Team of the Week.
For this week's Team of the Week, we have chosen the Fridge Bots out of Corona, Michigan, Team 5084. Thank you for what you do for the people in your community. I know you're greatly appreciated, so the Fridge Bots out of Corona, Michigan, Team 5084, you are our Team of the Week. And with that, this ends the 45th episode of the RoboZone podcast. You can follow us on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Music, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Thank you for listening. If you want to nominate a team for the week, please reach out to us on our social media. We'll talk to you next week.
The RoboZone podcast is brought to you by Kettering University. It's a Kettering-built world. Thanks for listening to the RoboZone podcast with your host, Pete Ekman. Find us online at RoboZoneTV.com and on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram.